Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I am Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock. And
I don't know why we're so far into this podcast and I'm still using my real name. Like, it's embarrassing.
I'm Buck Fuckerton. Yeah, I'm gonna just like fuck the apology preamble shit. You get the show when you get it at this point. I'm gonna just plow through.
Yeah. I kind of. It's you're lucky that we're still doing shows. Damn it.
Yeah,
because it's against our will at this point.
Non-essential pod. You're welcome.
That's what we've needed all these years. Is just like the ego, the unearned ego.
Yeah. Well, fuck, dude. I see people online all the time who they're millionaires now because they're just all they did was go online and act like they were God's gift to YouTube or some shit. So
right,
we need that attitude about it.
And we do have a reputation. I've got he kind of started as a client, or really his family did. But like just over the years, I've got to know him. He's really cool. I mean, he got married and his wife's really cool too. But they're kind of into some of the nerdier stuff like I've been, but I hadn't seen him in a long time, which in my industry is usually a good thing. But they came in the other day, we were talking, he's like, you do that podcast, don't you? I'm like, fuck yeah, we do.
Hell yeah.
Except he was referring to the video game one, which we haven't done for a long time. But it's like, yeah, we do.
Same show, pretty much.
Yeah. So we have a reputation. Now, clearly they don't listen, but that's not the important part. The important part is people know we do it.
Right. Yeah, and it's weird. I have the same reaction anytime somebody tells me like, "Oh, I listen to your show," and it's always I don't even mean it. It's just my natural like. If you know anything about this show, we don't fucking promote it very well, and it's like we're very self-deprecating. So somebody's like, "Oh, I was listening to your show," and my first reaction without fail is, "Oh, that's a mistake."
Why? Yeah, I know. See, the like, you have a podcast question. It's just the kind of like embarrassing, but like, yeah, I do. Everybody does. I listen to your show. That's the like, oh, I think I'm getting a phone call. I got to go. Like,
well, yeah, I just really don't want to. I want people to like.
Yeah, you want them to listen. I just don't want them to talk to me about this.
Well, it's like, it's not even that. I do kind of like, I would love to engage with the audience more. It's just sort of, I don't really have anything to say to that. You know, it's like, I listen to your show. Well, I'm sorry. You know?
Is it good? I don't listen to it.
My default is like, are you mad at me? Like,
yeah, are you mad at me?
Are you pissed? Like, sorry.
I try to make a mental note. I'm like, well, don't tell stories about this person anymore.
I don't. You know, I can cut me out of your life if it bothers you that much. Like, that's you always have that option. I'll tell stories until I don't have ammo to tell them.
Cut Me Out of Your Life is a great title for your first studio album, by the way.
Yeah.
But it sounds like yacht rock from the 80s.
My preferred genre.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you haven't listened to our show before, every week we tell each other, or why do I say that? That's not true. It hasn't been every week for the better part of this year. Every time we do a show,
yeah,
whenever that may be, we tell each other stories, and they can be fact, fiction, usually a creepypasta, and that's what it is today, even though I took like a month off.
Yeah, but it's funny because it was getting to the point where that just kind of felt like a cop-out, but it didn't stop me. Yeah. Now it doesn't, because I'm in the mood. It's been a while. We need some creepypasta in our life.
Yeah, and I just like doing them, and it's... I like regular topics too, but these are easier and they're a lot more fun.
They're fun, yeah. But I wish I had saved some wine because nothing goes with pasta better than wine.
Then Chardonnay.
Fuck that. I'm
a Chardonnay.
I'm a snob. Cabernet.
Merlot.
I like a Merlot. Cabernet usually, or Pinot Grigio.
I don't drink
Pinot Noir.
That shit.
Because you're not sophisticated like me.
No,
slurring my words already.
Because that's all I drank when I was like underage.
Well, here was the problem.
It tastes like fucking cleaner.
So I got kind of into scotches, and I like scotch. And I'm like, yeah, it's not great to drink scotch. Like, not that I would pound it, because you fucking can't, unless you're an alcoholic or rich or both. But then I was like, you know what? Wine's a little healthier and it's a hell of a lot cheaper, but it's really not, because once you open a bottle of wine, it's like, well, I got to drink this fucker. Like, liquor can last for months. Wine is like...
the fun part of drinking wine when we were underage was we would get this shit called $2 Check. It's from a Trader Joe's, which is like it might not be in some listeners' areas, but it's like a healthier, fancy grocery store.
It's like a Whole Foods or
it's along those lines, and you could get a case of that shit and it'd be pretty cheap.
Now, is it literally called $2 Check? Because I've heard
the brand is called Charles Shaw. Okay. And basically the reason they're able to sell it so cheap is because they just use all the grapes. There's no like filtration. So you can get it's a wine that fools experts sometimes, because you could get a bottle that's really good, or you could get a bottle that tastes like what it is, which is fucking piss. But we would get that, and the fun part of it was like it tasted awful, but everybody got multiple bottles for a party each.
Yeah,
and you felt like a pirate. You know, like like you just stole a bunch of wine and like you're just drinking straight from the bottle. You know, there was no sophistication to it.
Damn, now I want a pirate party.
Fuck yeah, you do. Everybody wants a pirate party.
Pirates are pretty fucking cool. My daughter came down.
By pirate party, I mean 4 dudes, not a woman in sight.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's historically accurate.
Fucking just sitting on a balcony laughing. That's...
And the rule is nobody can stop drinking until at least one person gets scurvy.
Yeah. Or, well, in this case, fucking alcohol poisoning.
Same thing.
So
see,
anyway.
ours was Boone's Farm. It was like the cheap, like just like you could get it at like grocery stores or bookstores, or I think schools sold it because it was so like barely alcoholic. But it was also, like you said, like $1 or $2 a bottle, and so you just drank a shitload of it, and then there you go.
Yeah, it was.
You know, too, some of that stuff, it was so sweet. Like, I don't know if you were ever actually getting drunk or just going into, like, diabetic, like, pre-diabetes.
Like, getting old and shit kind of sucks, because then you have taste, and you want alcohol that tastes good, that people will actually enjoy. But back then, it was just like, who has $20 to pay for Saturday night? You know?
Right.
You know, because that would cover your fucking booze expenses.
Oh, I'm telling you, the best time in life is when you're like, well, or if you get into it younger than I did, but like 19 and 20 was fantastic because you're not old enough to buy it, so you're never fucking paying. Like, you might chip in a couple bucks, but I know I drank way more than I contributed money-wise, because everybody would just throw a couple bucks. As long as in total you had enough to buy, like, the cheapest fucking beer in those giant bricks, and then just bottles of, like, Malibu, rum, you know, whatever cheap, like, flavored quasi booze you could get. That was Saturday night, and also Friday night, and also Tuesday nights, and a lot of Thursday nights. But we might have been alcoholics when I was in college. But
I definitely wasn't healthy. I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, but I did not have a healthy relationship with anything.
That's true.
Real.
Yeah, it wasn't the drinking; it was that you.
It was that I was a fundamentally broken person.
Right. That's part of growing up, kids. Yeah. If you're listening to this and you're right about that age, just jump full bore into it. And if you survive, that's Darwinism.
You've endured. And now you're here, stuck with us.
It either makes you stronger or it ruins you for life.
Yeah.
I live in a town where there's a lot of people my age that's still what they do every night. We had people at those fucking pirate parties, I would say, are still not, right? Yeah.
All right. So, the Creepypasta time.
I forgot you said this was a long one, so we should probably get to it.
So this is a long one. It's 7 parts. So I don't think we'll finish. If I get midway through and it's an hour, we will not plow through. We will put it off. But this is from a user named HopelessNightOwl, and it's called Lost Episodes Can Be Found Again.
Oh, God, don't tell. That already is horror for a show that's done 300 and some. I don't remember what we're up to. It's not that, but
It's like I want to say like 251.
Yeah,
that's my
well.
guess.
So then, so if you include the joystick ones, yeah.
Oh, it was way. Yeah, we did a lot of joystick. Anyway, I'm going to tell you a secret, but first you have to promise me not to laugh. Which Steve can't guarantee. He's fucking 3 drinks in now.
Right. See, I already laughed. Fuck. I lost.
You're like, sorry, dude, you're fucked. You're on the wrong show for this. This is still an uncomfortable subject for me, so I'd appreciate your understanding. Do we have a deal?
No.
Sure. Wink, wink. When I was 5 years old, I watched a movie no child should ever see. Rocket Man. I don't remember much about the circumstances of my viewing other than that it was at the house where my family lived, late at night, in the dark with only the television providing light. The film was an animated feature and depicted themes of animal cruelty, death, and dismemberment. The scenes were surreal and terrifying and left a deep impression on me. See, the only thing I saw as a child that traumatized me was Thriller, the music video.
See, I was picturing they're describing just the Watership Down. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but...
I was a big Michael Jackson fan, so it freaked me out when he became a monster. I was like...
I was old enough when I saw it that it was just so fucking corny, and everybody's like, oh, this is this, like, historic, like, pivotal music video. I'm like, it's so fucking stupid.
But to be fair, it turns out it is one of the best music videos compared to what the shit that comes out now.
Yeah.
Like, I'd much rather bands just, like, gradually turn into a fucking ghoul.
Fair point. Yeah.
Like, half of them are just people pretending to have sex. It's really sad. I remember. Yeah, I mean, I remember there was a stretch there where every Maroon 5 music video was just an excuse for that dude to like take his shirt off and pretend he was having sex. And
that's if you're gonna have pretend sex. I don't want a shirtless Maroon 5 dude. Like, there's more better ways to do that.
There's better pretend sex out there,
right? Like a werewolf Michael Jackson having sex.
Yeah, I want to see werewolf Michael Jackson fuck ghoul Michael Jackson.
Now I'm just picturing that.
That's going to be a fun audio line to edit. For years afterward, the only scene I could remember clearly was when an evil man was drowning a family of cats in a stream, which I would have nightmares about for years afterward. I remember seeing it early in the movie, followed by many more disturbing and surreal scenes. Now remember your promise, because this is the part I was talking about. I never told anyone about what I saw, but the name of the movie was well known. The Aristicats.
Yeah, well.
Well, can't not laugh at that, friend.
The hair on the back of my neck did just raise. That is a terrifying movie.
It is a scary movie. There was a stretch there where my brother would like play the fucking songs from that movie anytime we were playing board games, and it was like psychological warfare.
And you mean like last year, right?
I mean, pretty fucking recently. Like the last 4 years, he'd pull out his cell phone, and then you'd hear everybody wants to be a cat, and like it pissed me off because I'm trying to focus on the goddamn game.
I've never actually seen that movie, but
neither have I, and I never will, thanks to my brother. I suppose I can forgive you if you broke your promise, but I must emphasize that I am not joking. I saw a movie called The Aristocats, filled with the scenes I have described, and it scarred me for life. I didn't think about the experience very often, but it was always in the back of my mind in some way, though I didn't realize it at the time. I know now that it caused me to shy away from animation and children's shows. It subtly informed my whole outlook on the trappings of childhood. I found myself bracing with dread whenever I had to watch any children's animation in school. My childhood was relatively normal otherwise, for an introvert anyway, but every once in a while I would think back to the movie and find my inner peace disturbed. It wasn't until maybe 3rd or 4th grade that I started to realize that my experience with the movie had not been typical. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents, about what I had witnessed in that dark room at age 5, but I eventually figured out on my own that there was nothing horrific about the version everyone else had watched. I still wasn't willing to see it for myself, but I figured if they had seen what I had seen, I would have been able to tell whenever they spoke of the film. Anyone who had anything to say about it seemed to consider it either a nostalgic classic or unremarkable.
You know what? Here's another thing, though. Like I said, I'm very familiar. I've known of the movie since it came out. I've never watched it. I'm 42. I've never fucking once heard somebody bring up the movie Aristocats.
Not until my brother played that fucking song.
Yeah.
I never heard of it.
Yeah. Like, the only reason I even, like, recently remembered is it shows up on, it's like Netflix or something, like, when you're scrolling through.
Make your kids become experts on the Aristicats. When I was in middle school, I asked my mom if I had ever seen the Aristicats. She said I had once, having stayed up past my bedtime and watched it secretly. She said I seemed strangely disturbed by the film, and I had never wanted to watch it again as a small child. I asked if we still had it in the house, but she said I had been so afraid of the movie that she had thrown it out. It had been a home VHS recording she bought at an estate sale rather than a retail copy. I finally decided to watch the movie again. I ordered it from the library and watched it one Saturday. It took me a couple hours to work up the courage to finally hit play. I found it to be a wonderful film. Now it's scary. Immediately I realized that whatever I remembered seeing at age 5 had nothing to do with this movie. There was no graphic violence, no psychedelic scenes, nothing that should have traumatized me as a child. And yet, what I had seen all those years ago definitely shared elements with this movie. The kittens and their mother were drugged and kidnapped, not drowned. But I instantly recognized the moments leading up to this divergence, and almost had a flashback to the cartoon drowning I had witnessed. I was hoping to find closure, but instead I was more troubled than ever. There was no question in my mind now that I had viewed some awful and perverted version of this classic film. I told one of my friends about it a few days later. I didn't let him know how convinced I was of what I had seen as a young child. Instead, simply relating it as a vague and confused memory like, hey, the other day I saw the Aristocats. I used to be terrified of that movie because for some reason I thought I saw gore scenes and cats drowning when I watched it at 5 years old. Funny how your memory plays tricks on you at that age, isn't it?
It's just like the Mandela effect with the whole, like, what is it? Is it Sinbad as a genie or Shaq as a genie or whatever? Like,
you mean Kazam?
No, see, Shaq was Kazam, right?
Yeah, Shaq was Kazam.
Yeah, there's this whole thing where and like I was kind of one of them where you swore that Sinbad, if you remember the comedian, played a genie, and he didn't.
Didn't he?
No. That's the whole thing. It's that whole like Mandela effect thing where we're like, I swear he did. And you go through his IMDb and it's like he didn't.
All right. We're going to fucking have a Mandela effect moment here because I don't believe that.
Yeah,
I swear to God there was a movie where he was like granting wishes or some shit.
Yeah, I know.
Dead air.
I know, it's perfect rating. Hey, if it makes you feel better, the local like sports show that I like that doesn't almost never fucking talks about sports, which is why I like it. They're a lot like us, actually, just way better. But they do this. They'll get into these discussions, and they're like, oh, this is fantastic radio. Hold on. Let's Google this.
Maybe I'm thinking of First Kid, where he was like a Secret Service agent.
That's the thing. Like, there's movies. And it's like, I think this combination of all of those kids' movies from that era were very generic. And then the fact that he, like, just always wore the hoop earrings that, like, looked like a genie. Like,
yeah.
When I read that, I'm like, well, that's bullshit. He fucking definitely was a genie. You go through.
That's pretty fucking amazing. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know that's one of there's a whole list of things like that, but that was the one that I'm like, this is bullshit. This is wrong. They're lying.
Imagine being a dude who, like, everybody thinks you played a genius.
Apparently people fucking go up to him all the time and we're like, I loved you in that. Yeah. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's a real thing.
That rules.
That's what you get for wearing hoop earrings, though.
Yeah, I mean, I loved you when you were the fucking Prince of Persia.
Anyway.
My friend told me about the movie Felidae. He explained that it was an animated movie about cats with a similar animation style that contained graphic gore scenes and was definitely not for children. He said maybe I had somehow seen that movie instead of the Aristocats. I streamed and watched Felidae. I saw what my friend meant about the style having the same feel as the Aristocats, except dark and bloody, but it wasn't what I had seen. I knew for sure that 5-year-old me had watched a movie with the same characters as the Aristocats, and I also knew for sure that it had contained bizarre and disturbing scenes not shown in the mainstream version. This whole thing was driving me up a wall. To try and get some kind of closure, I started seeking out and watching old children's animation that contained graphic and disturbing elements that would never be included today, such as Watership Down, the 1978 version.
So there you go.
While these works were interesting and gripping in their own way, they were decidedly not non-Disney. While other studios may have been willing to take such risks with their work decades ago, the fact that the Aristocats is a Disney property made me sure that the version I had first seen was something I was absolutely not supposed to, ever. Part 2. I let it go after a while. A few years passed, and in college I learned about this internet urban legend called lost episodes. People claim to have seen episodes of TV shows or altered versions of movies, usually animated, that contain graphic and disturbing content. The episode or movie was often found in unexpected places, and those claiming to have seen it often said it mysteriously disappeared, whether through a VHS tape appearing to have somehow self-erased, a website going dead immediately after viewing, etc. To be honest, I didn't put much stock in the validity of these stories, but with my Aristocats experience still in the back of my mind, I decided to look into it further. I found a YouTube channel called Cartoon Geek, who was discussing a certain lost episode for his 40,000 subscriber special.
I have a hard time believing that, like, somebody nabbing the name Cartoon Geek would be, like, also this niche, like...
40,000?
Yeah.
YouTuber. Well, you never know. Depends on his delivery. Or sex pest crimes.
That's true. I don't know. That makes you more famous anymore, I think.
It rallies the audience that's already there, but if you don't have a big enough audience to begin with.
That's true. So, again, kids, if you're young and listening to this and looking for life advice, get famous first and then be a sex pest. You can't do it the other way around.
Steve Gibson does not speak for the entire non-essential pocket.
Are you saying you become the sex pest first? Or
I would say my official stance is don't be a sex pest.
Yeah, that's probably
the official stance of the show. I'm going to put out that fucking Jack Black. Like, I was shocked to hear what my cohort had said.
Yeah, except for, in his case, his cohort said something that I think relatively okay.
I think the entire internet fucking made that joke, but sure, Jack. After going through the obligatory thanks and talking about how much his subscribers meant to him and all that, he began. Now, for those of you who are new to this channel, I'm basically just a guy obsessed with all things nostalgic and geeky about cartoons and other media. Most of my content is simply reviewing old cartoons and whatnot, usually superhero related. However, I also do a side series on the strange and creepy side of animation. For example, My 20K subspecial was a 3-part series on Disney and their alleged subliminal messages in film and television. And this video you're watching now is sort of in that same vein. We're going to be taking another look at a certain lost episode. For those who don't know, lost episodes are basically this urban legend about episodes of TV shows which were lost, as the name implies. That's a thanks. God damn it.
I am mad at how good you are at sounding like one of these YouTubers.
I'm proud of myself. I didn't pre-read this. I just jumped into that.
Yeah, I know. And like I said, I'm not joking. I'm like, as you were going, I'm getting madder and madder. Like, fuck, this is good.
These episodes are said to contain graphic and disturbing and surreal elements and are generally regarded as material that the public was not meant to see. A few months ago, I covered an alleged lost episode from the 1968 Filmation series, The Adventures of Batman. I loved this show as a kid, even though it was a few decades before my time. And there was one episode with a scene where Batman and Robin fall through a trapdoor set by the Joker and slide toward their doom. At the end of the slide tunnel is a giant open furnace, looking like the Joker's face. Of course, since this is a kid's show, they don't actually slide into the furnace and burn alive. They get out with their gadgets. So to recap, in 2009, this anonymous internet post started circulating online about an alleged lost version of this scene. In it, the dynamic duo actually do slide into the furnace, burn alive, scream, and are shown graphically being burned to a crisp, followed by surreal and non-linear scenes of grieving friends of Bruce Wayne in mourning and the funeral service. Now, when I did my first video on this subject, I was honest with you guys. I didn't really think there was much credibility to this story. I like to keep an open mind on this show, but there was just certain elements of the post that made me say, okay, this is probably bullshit.
I would say, as somebody that, because for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you, initially, like, I went into animation. I went to the Art Institute for that. If you're talking about a show from the 60s that's animated, that's all fucking hand-drawn. Animators are fucking sick people. Like, it is true that a lot of animators like to make joke, like the Disney stuff about, like, hiding, like, sexual things or whatever. Like, animators, they're us. I mean, if you're that kind of person, you have that kind of humor. At the same time, in order to animate, like, this joke, like, whatever alternate scene, that's thousands of fucking hand-drawn cells. You're not doing that. Now, today, maybe, because now a lot of it's computer-generated. It's not as much like manual labor. But back then, that would basically never happen.
I remember the original Looney Tunes did make like an outtake animation of Porky Pig, which you and me have maybe talked about. And it was just like playing off like the voice actor being funny. So it's Porky Pig being like, son of a bit, and then at the end he's like, you thought I was going to say son of a bitch, didn't you? You know, and like, I think they animated that and maybe added a few frames of animation, but it was meant for a real cartoon.
Yeah, if you're doing something like that, you can use pre-existing like mouth phonetic shapes to do that. So you already have that. But
that's still probably a ton of work.
Well, yeah, especially back then. But compared to animating these like elaborate like full scenes and stuff, like that would be much like. Although, I guess I'm just workshopping this in my head. That said, look what people on the internet do in their free time. There's a lot of people that have a lot of fucking time to just do what they find funny. So maybe, I guess. Huh. I don't know. But yeah, that's the part that I find like that would be difficult back then. Now, not so much. Like I said, now a lot of the stuff is computer generated and it's easier to do with less resources.
That's true.
Anyway. Enough of being a downer. I do like the idea of, like, in my head, I very much am picturing 1960s Batman and Robin, like, burning alive.
Down a slide to their fucking lava death.
Like, their skin's peeling off as they scream.
As a fan of animation, I love Torment. Okay, this is probably bullshit. Like how the tape conveniently erased itself after the anonymous author viewed it. But since then, I've gotten a lot of comments and emails talking about how allegedly this lost episode has been posted online. Naturally, a lot of you are already saying this is fake, but this topic won the poll for this special, so let's find out. After some preamble, the video cut to the alleged lost episode. At that part where Batman and Robin are sliding down the tunnel toward the furnace, all the parts where the two use their belt gadgets to get free were removed, and when the two were close to the furnace, the screen filled with fire, and 2 poor-quality shrieks played. After that, there were some strange abstract scenes, but all of these seemed to simply be random clips from other episodes with some editing effects thrown at them.
Well, there you go. I should have shut my fucking mouth. He explained it.
Cartoon Geek returned. Okay, so right off the bat, Batman and Robin die off screen, which is obviously not what happened in the lost episode post that was shared around. They basically just used the flames from earlier in the scene and cut them over to make it look like Batman and Robin died, adding in a canned scream effect. The surreal scenes that follow are also just random clips from throughout the show with various editing tricks applied. I could have done some of them myself. So while this is impressive work, I think it's pretty clear that this is a fan project inspired by the anonymous post. I'm going to rate this animation myth as debunked for now.
I do love, too, that idea that these YouTubers have about being the official, like...
Cartoon Geek declares bullshit.
Right.
He gave some more breakdown and deconstruction of the clip before ending with some kind of promotional giveaway. What really got my attention, however, were some of the comments. There were at least a few people insisting that the lost episode was real and that they had seen it with their own eyes. I private messaged one of these people. I asked if he had really seen the episode and about the circumstances. He responded within the hour. Yeah, I was at summer school, and during recess, I snuck off to the school's library back room to be alone and vape. No. I put a VHS of the cartoon that was there and saw it. Honestly, I wasn't really disturbed back then since my parents let me watch R-rated horror movies and stuff back then. Lol. But yeah, man, this thing is real. I asked if he knew any information about the other supposed lost episode phenomena, but he said he did not. I did some research of my own. There were a few lost episode stories floating around on the internet, mostly about children's shows. To be honest, not many of them seemed all that credible. Still, I strongly felt there was something real here behind all the embellishment and fictionalization. I decided to see if there was any such stories surrounding the Aristocats. My searches for disturbing content in the movie returned nothing but the expected, this one scene in the Aristocats totally scarred me for life as a kid stuff, or more information about that Felidae movie. I tried reaching out to some of the credited animators, writers, and crew members, varying the content of my emails so as to cast as wide a net as possible. For example, some of my emails focused on disturbing content that may have been cut, while other drafts asked more generally about alternative versions or cutscenes. I also expanded my web searches to pornography. I used all the search engine tricks I could find and started using obscure and foreign language engines. After a few months of no information and no responses to my email queries, I started to think that maybe I should just forget about the whole thing. Maybe my real memories of watching the Aristocats had merged with some nightmare I had to create my present memories, and maybe a lovely burp from me to you. And I had to create my present memories, and maybe repeating those memories to myself so many times during my childhood had falsely convinced me of their reality. I was about to consign to this newfound self-closure when I found something during one of my foreign language searches. It was a thread on a Chinese message board. The OP had a JPEG image and text that roughly translated to Aristocats movie, creepy. If I had had coffee to drop and spill all over my computer, I would have. The image dashed away any hope I had.
I like that phrasing because it sounds like not necessarily like if I was drinking coffee. It's like if I had coffee,
thrown it into my fucking wall.
Yeah, like even if it was like on the counter behind him, he would have gone and grabbed it and thrown it on. Like, what?
I wish you were drinking something so I could knock it to the floor. The image dashed away any hope I had of passing off my childhood experience as just a traumatic nightmare that had stuck in my head longer than it should have. It was a frame from whatever twisted version of the Aristocats I had seen, and while I hadn't actually remembered this particular still until I found this message board, the instant I saw it, I remembered the clip, and more memories started flooding back. Still vague, but vivid and definitely real. I was now more firmly convinced than I had ever been before that the violent version of the movie was real. The image was of the black kitten, Berlioz. I've, again, never seen the movie, probably saying that wrong. His face nearly filled the frame, and his eyes were wide and terrified, red veins bulging, so he's roided out. His fur standing up as if charged with electricity. The picture itself wasn't any more inherently disturbing than the grotesque fan art you can find for all kinds of different shows and movies, but unlike those other images, I knew this one had a genuinely sinister story of some kind behind it. As such, it haunted me like no other image ever had. There were only a couple replies on the thread, both of which were short, and neither of which provided any more information about the image. I used Google Translate to try to ask the OP for more information, but never received a response. I performed a reverse image search of the file, but it returned no other results. However, a few weeks later, I finally got a reply to one of the emails I had sent to the production staff. The reply was to one of the emails I had written that hinted more strongly at the reality of what I had seen as a kid. The response was short and curt, but gave me new hope for finding answers.
How did you find me? Go the fuck away. You're
Jesus
crazy.
Christ, the Aristocats kid? Really?
I directed, I'm trying to think of, like, the King's Speech.
You realize I directed Sinbad as a genie? Move on. What if somebody thought they directed Sinbad in the genie movie?
Yeah. They're doing like an E! Weekly interview, and like, oh, it's like that movie where
that's the thing they're most proud of.
It's like, I think it's a pretty good numbers in the theater too, if I remember.
Yeah, it's like somebody won an Academy Award, but they're still thinking about that time they imagined they directed Sinbad as a genie.
I'm picturing the character actor that's pissed that he's not getting residuals from this Sinbad genie movie that doesn't exist. He's like, where's my fucking check? Everybody's seen this movie.
Everybody talks about this fucking movie.
I haven't seen a fucking dime.
Hello. Sorry for the late response, but I read between the lines of your message, and if you've seen what I think you were hinting at, you need to look into the Lost Media Group. That's all I'm going to say on the subject.
Good. It's easily Googleable phrase like Lost Media.
Yeah. Moviestuff.com. Like, I Googled Lost Media Group, but the closest thing I could find was a website for an online club called the Lost Media Society. It was a site for media enthusiasts to collect, trade, sell, buy, and discuss lost media, including lost episodes, as in real lost episodes that simply never aired, not the urban legend ones that contain surreal, disturbing, or even supernatural content. This community was interesting in its own right, and I became involved with it, eventually becoming a site moderator. Fuck, that was fast.
My ambition for power knew new limits.
I got sidetracked and realized I could ban some fuckers. Once I was established as a respected regular, I decided to private message one of the head admins and ask him about the Lost Episodes legend. He responded that he had heard of it, but it wasn't really something the site dealt with. He recalled that in the past it had been talked about, and some had even suggested banning discussion about it, since it was seen as a spam topic after a while. I asked if he knew about an organization called the Lost Media Group. He said he had heard of it, but didn't know anything about it. And
I said, what fucking good are you loser?
And suggested that I contact a certain other admin who did not know more about this entity.
I hope he means like he eventually found out he didn't. It's like, contact this guy. He doesn't know more about this. But I just want you to bug him. I hate that jerk.
You know who would be really annoyed right now? Talking to you.
I heard his mother just died. Why don't you bother him? Just pile on.
Getting a fucking fly flying into my face. Piece of shit. I messaged this admin and got a response within the hour. He told me the Lost Media Group was the group alleged by some to be behind the Lost Episodes phenomenon. According to him, they produced not just altered versions of movies and television episodes, but were also said to make their own versions of other media such as video games and comic books. He said he did not know much else about them other than that some of the Lost Media collectors were willing to pay large sums for an authentic work by this group, and that before the Lost Media Society had banned discussion of the Lost Episodes legend, some of these collectors had asked about them on the site. I wondered if he could refer me to such a collector. He said my best bet would be a certain retired site admin who is no longer active in the Lost Media Society. He linked me a couple of archived threads by this individual, asking about lost episodes, and gave me the man's email address. I shot him an email asking about his interest in lost episodes, and even went as far as to directly ask if he knew about a lost episode type version of the Aristocats. A few months went by.
My interest is now piqued because I love the idea of forming a group that's like unrelated to the original works but puts out fake works, but only like one just to fuck with like a couple individuals.
It is it's the biggest like that's taking trolling to an art.
I like it.
You know, it's like.
I now wish I was talented so I could contribute. But.
It's like a pharaoh burying himself with just like lumps of turds in his hands.
Right.
So like when he's like excavated, they're like, "Oh, fuck you."
So that's what I've talked about that on the show. Like I've for like decades I've talked about like the idea of like putting in my will when I die, like bury me with random shit. So like in the middle of the woods too, so that like hopefully in 1,000 years archaeologists find my body and are like, what the fuck? Like they never say what the fuck though, because they think they're smart, so they create this whole narrative around like
I would love to be buried like a mummy, and like present day I die, but you take me to some fucking Egyptian tomb and shit and bury me down there. And then somebody finds me and they're stoked, but then they find a cell phone in my pocket.
I'm thinking more like just random stuff from like multiple like centuries, and then like bury me like upside down. Like so that they create this whole narrative like, hominids from this time period believed that
strung upside down into the
they believe that heaven lied in the middle of the earth, and it's like none of it's fucking true, but they're trying to decipher nonsense.
No, it's just in the fucking 2020s, humanity got very bored and miserable.
Well, the other
started fucking with people from the grave.
Yeah, and like there's also real stories. I've seen shows, but I don't remember the name of it. Like there was this very rich person who, before they died, like hid treasure, like money or jewels, or nobody really knows, but it's supposed to be like a worthwhile treasure, and left just very obscure clues, and people have been looking for it, and it seems like it's a real thing, like but it could be a hoax. And I'm like, I want to do it as a fucking hoax. Like I want for hundreds of years people dedicating their lives to the search for a treasure that doesn't exist. Unfortunately, nobody in the world would believe that I had like hidden millions of dollars. Right. Yeah. Like, but if I was a rich asshole I would 100% sow that fake story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so my point is, I am very behind this.
I would leave the fortune behind, but I would leave it behind in one of those like cryptos that is useless. Like,
yeah,
like there's like NFTs that like are only. This was I heard about this where like it was like an NFT attached to a crypto, so you could only ever move the NFTs in parallel with the crypto, but the company never released the crypto. So they basically sold off all these NFTs that nobody could do anything with, and then just fucking bailed.
Yeah,
it was like, you know, it's, that's what I would leave behind. That's my fortune. Enjoy.
I think I would leave.
You get Benny bucks.
Now I'm thinking about this. I'm gonna have a very complicated series of clues, and when you get to the treasure, it's just a Cybertruck. But by the time anybody finds it, because you leave one of those outside for more than like 8 days, they're ruined. So
I'm gonna leave like a fucking Uncharted adventure behind.
Yeah.
But at the end, it's like fucking Nathan Drake finally finds the treasure room, and it's just a crazy crab bobblehead.
I would like that though, because that's where archaeologists 1,000 years from now like attach some deep meaning to it.
As they should. The crazy crab is terrifying, and he tormented a generation.
He needs to be brought back.
He does. Baseball's lost something. The A's don't have a home, so just fucking give them the crazy crab. All right, part 3. A few months went by with no response. During this time, I researched as much as I could about lost episodes. I found out about another alleged lost episode of The Flintstones. The story behind this episode was much like other lost episode stories. A special episode of the show aired on an otherwise unused television channel and had gory and surreal content. The main difference between this story and the others was that this one had a somewhat credible outside source. The original forum post had a link to a digitally archived local news article from 1979. The FCC had received complaints from dozens of people claiming to have seen the episode. The complaints came from the Lake Cabito Gama region of Minnesota, with most originating from a couple of specific lake resorts. The incident was locally known as the... Why did they make me say it twice when I can't say it once? Cabito Gama broadcast. I decided the next logical step was to contact the FCC for more details. They responded within a week saying that, unfortunately, they were not at liberty to give out such information. At that moment, I considered filing a Freedom of Information Act request. Oh, man. I'm going to have so many lawyers up your ass if you don't tell me about this Flintstones thing right now. But decided to take a different route. One of the 2 lake resorts most heavily involved with the incident was still in operation. I scheduled a vacation from work, and a few weeks later I was on my way to Lake Cabito Gama. Kleck's Cove was a collection of 15 cabins, a bar-restaurant, and a small boat dock with boats available for lease. I had rented an old A-frame unit and planned to stay for 2 weeks. Imagine using 2 weeks of time off.
Yeah.
It sounds really nice, but imagine you're doing it to like look up a cartoon.
Right.
The resort was a nice place to stay. I spent a few days fishing and seeing local attractions. Well, there you go. I fell in with a group of regulars who fished at the resort every year. We went on several boat trips before I had enough courage to ask the oldest of them about the Cabito Gama broadcast. Oh, that thing? Funny thing. I actually just missed out on the whole thing. It happened a week before I stayed here in the summer of '79. I heard a lot about it, though. You'll want to talk to Ed about it. He was there. He was referring to Ed Kleck, the founder and proprietor of Kleck's Cove. I had considered asking him about the Cabito Gama broadcast before, but wanted to feel out the locals first. However, at this point, I decided I was being overly cautious and chose to follow the man's advice.
That was a typo, by the way. He wanted to feel up the locals first.
Yeah.
He's just walking around groping people.
He's just moaning. Yeah, you look like you'll talk about this. Mr. Kleck was in his late 70s, but his memory was still sharp. He liked to tell stories, and I took advantage of this by starting a conversation with him about the history of the resort in the lake. This got him going for a couple hours before I brought up the Kibito Gama broadcast.
A couple fucking hours?
Yeah.
Jeez.
He likes to talk.
Yeah, but I can't imagine. I think by this point I'd be like, you know what?
Can we steer
this thing I've been obsessed with my entire life, I no longer care. Like, I'm going home.
Now, why do you want to know about that? He asked, seeming taken aback. I told him I had read about it on the internet and what the story said. He shrugged and said, oh, well, that's pretty much what happened. Nothing much else to tell, really. I asked if he had seen the episode, to which he responded that he had caught the end of the broadcast after being told about it as it was happening. He said he saw Barney die a horrible and bloody death in some faux Stone Age contraption, but didn't remember much else. He was reluctant to continue the conversation much further, but assured me that the incident was very real indeed. I pondered all I had learned on my drive home. I had been left with more questions than answers, and didn't seem to be getting any closer to tracking down the Aristocats' lost recording. The more I learned, the more new questions came up. Was the disturbing Aristocats version I had seen connected to the Kibito Gama broadcast? Or the alleged Batman and Robin lost episode? No, you heard fucking Cartoon Geek. He debunked that. Or was I making connections where there were none? Did that person on YouTube who claimed to have seen the Batman Lost episode really see it? Or had he just been trolling me? Surely all these claims couldn't be coincidental, but there was no explanation for the existence of these lost episodes. While I was churning all this information over in my mind, I didn't notice the vehicle behind me.
Oh, no.
Where somebody's asking questions. Take them out. I didn't notice the vehicle behind me until it was right up on my bumper. I swerved as it made contact and careened into a ditch. The other car drove on without stopping. I wasn't injured, and in fact my airbag hadn't even deployed, but I sat in shock for many, many minutes afterward. When I finally got my bearings, I called 911 and told them my location based on the nearest mile marker. It took about 45 minutes for a state officer to find me. I told the police what had happened, but wasn't able to provide details such as the make and color of the car that had hit me or the license plate. I did not tell them what business I was on or my lingering suspicion that the incident had to do with my investigation of the Kibito Gama broadcast. So that's the end of part 3. Like I said, this is a 7-parter, and I think this would be a good midpoint.
Yeah, it's a good cliffhanger because now we don't know if the cops are in on the Kibito Gama whatever.
I like hiding the most inconsequential thing about what you were doing. I didn't tell the cops I was asking questions about a fucking cartoon from the 70s. But yeah, and we could just chain directly into this for the next episode, and that gives you a week off from having to do a story.
Yeah, and I'm
all about that.
Yeah, so next time we record, which may be in 2 weeks, maybe in 8 weeks, maybe in 3 weeks, we don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Whenever it is that we're back, I will make sure that I'm here. Yeah. I forget what I was going with that because I'm 2 wines and a beer in tonight. Yeah.
The next time we're here, I'll be here.
We'll be here. Which is exactly what you would say if you planned on having somebody like stand in for you.
Critics agree. Every time he shows up, he's here.
Yeah. That would very much be my reviews if I was in a movie. Well, those would be the positive reviews. Is he was on the screen.
Yeah. I think that's the worst part of the Sinbad Genie movie is it's starring him, but he's not there.
And it's funny because if you're like me, it's like one of the most like, I don't want to say cherished, but it's like one of the like things that you're like, oh, that was one of the good things Sinbad did. And it's like, no, he didn't fucking do it.
No, he was great in that.
Anything that he actually did, you're like, oh, I didn't like that. I loved him in that genie thing, though. Poor guy.
I didn't even know I was dealing, like, I was under that.
I am very glad I got to break that to you, because watching that in real time was my brain when I found that out. I was like, there's no fucking way that that's fake. Like,
yeah, and also what a failure on a generation to not cast him as a genie in some shit.
Right.
Like, that should have been, like, super easy.
Yeah, they wouldn't have even had to make it a movie. They just follow him around for an hour and a half with a camera.
Yeah.
And be like, he's a genie. Poof. But yeah.
It's fucking wild.
Yeah, like I said, if you look up a Mandela effect, there's a bunch of them, but that's my favorite one, because that's the one that, because there's a lot of them that are like, yeah, but like, you think about them and you're like, yeah, maybe I thought that could be real, but that one, it's like, you swear, even knowing it's fake, it's like, I swear to God, I can picture him in my fucking head, like, in the costume.
Yeah, I vividly have an image of him,
right?
Like, laying on his side with, like, genie shoes and shit.
Uh-huh.
And, like, it... like, what the fuck? Who broke our brains?
Yeah, like...
Why do we feel that way about him?
He clearly had a manager at some point that snuck into all of our houses and fucking hypnotized us. Like... And the best part is, like I said, read about it, and you're like... He gets approached all the time, and it probably bothers him.
I bet.
Oh.
God damn it.
The thing you're most well known for, you hadn't. It
like,
doesn't
that's the thing. Like, I'm giving this character in this story shit, but I'm going to end up in fucking Minnesota trying to find some lost Sinbad genie movie. Like,
that's the thing. So far, I feel like the story is very elaborate for what it is, but I do like the idea, because I could see that is the exact kind of thing. If I was ever to end up in like an actual like mental institution, one of the most like likely scenarios would be that you think you remember something that everybody else around you is like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And you're like, I swear to God it did. Like, I think we've all had that feeling where like you see something and everybody else is like, no, that didn't. And you're like, I fucking saw it. Mm-hmm. So I like that idea. I do think this main character is over, like, the easier solution is just to be like, well, that's weird. Like, yeah. I could swear I remember this.
But I'm a midlife crisis away from, like, pulling some shit like this. Like, I'm going across the country to learn, like, well, like I said, to figure out what the fuck happened with Sinbad in this made-up genie movie.
And if I have to buy a Mazda Miata to do it, so be it.
Yeah, fuck it. I'll do whatever the hell I gotta do. Find one, like, delusional fucking cabin owner who's like, oh yeah, I watched that. It's like, I knew it.
How great would it be if the one person was somebody like, shit, I can't think of the name now. The guy from The Lighthouse, that Willem Dafoe, like, but real life Willem Dafoe, like, just the actors, like, yeah, I remember that, and fuck, it's been bothering me too. Let's go on a road trip, and you're like, hell yeah,
yeah, dude. That's a good movie idea.
It's not going to end well.
Yeah, like, because he's completely insane, and you're going insane.
Yeah, and between the two of you, Willem Dafoe's going to live. You're going to be the one that dies.
Yeah, it'll be like The Lighthouse, but you're like, there's not a fucking Sinbad Genie movie. Stop talking about the Sinbad Genie movie. And he'll be like, hark! Like, hark! And then we fight.
But, yeah. I don't want that as a movie. I want that as my real life. Like, I want to just randomly
I want to die myself. That way.
Yeah, I'm going to die as a result of, like, this psychedelic road trip in black and white. Like, suddenly the world around you don't see color anymore.
Willem Dafoe, Sinbad enthusiast.
Yeah. I have no idea what the guy's like in real life, but and I'm not like and I'm not like one of these like I really couldn't care less about celebrities.
I think he's one of those dudes. The vibe I get from interviews is he's so chill because like his characters always let him go fucking ape shit.
Yeah, and that would be disappointing. I don't want to hang out with chill Willem Dafoe. I want to hang out with Lighthouse Willem Dafoe. Or him from honestly like basically anything.
He's always like he always seems super calm in real life.
Yeah. Well, but even in the movies, it's like, this guy's nuts, but likable. Like, he might kill me, but I'll enjoy it. So this is the Willem Dafoe podcast episode. But
sure is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be back next time with part 2 of Lost Episodes Can Be Found Again.